Okay, guys, I'm live on YouTube. Feels good to be back. I have not done YouTubes in a few years, but promising you guys in 2021, I'm going to make sure that I have at least a weekly type video show going on YouTube. So much going on in this election. A few things I want to talk to you about. We got to talk about Beijing Biden. We need to talk about the last stand against socialism. But I think most importantly, I want to start by just saying I hope that every single person right now is reconsidering their GOP picks for 2024 because, wow, are we not learning right now how many people in the Republican Party are absolutely spineless? I mean, I knew they were spineless. You knew they were spineless, but everybody who's supposed to be like, oh, look at this person, they're so amazing, who is not speaking up right now in terms of the fraud going on in this election, and in terms of the tech censorship, in terms of everything that we are seeing, they are cowards and they do not deserve our support or our vote. This election is obviously not over, unfortunately, for Democrats who do not understand how government works and who get all of their information from the mainstream media. They think that when CNN calls a projection or Fox News calls a projection, that means that the votes are in and it's official, and they just, are feeling on civics courses. So I want to take this first off from the beginning, guys. I'm going to try to pay attention to the chat and do my best to understand how the chat works. I will eventually learn how the super chat works. I know that means that you guys can ask questions, and I'll get to that at the end, but there's a lot that I want to unpack first. Let me start by saying to the YouTube and Google gods, this is my opinion. So I'm going to often say in my opinion to make sure this video does not get censored. As we know, the tech overlords love to censor a video and rate it false. You cannot rate an opinion false, which is why I'm suing the fact checkers, which we'll get into later. Okay, so I wrote down some notes here. First and foremost, I think I have been the only Republican conservative that has been calling out the rigging of this election since February. You can go back, you can check my tweets, you can check my videos. The second that Democrats started talking about these lockdowns, the second that America went into a lockdown, the fix was in. I immediately started talking about it on all of my platforms. You can actually go back and watch a video, an interview that I did with Daily Caller, where I said this is the greatest rigging of an American election that has ever taken place. And that, again, was in early March when I sat down for that interview. What was I talking about? The way that the has rigged this election has been through illusory elements. Everything has been one big, great illusion. Joe Biden was never a strong candidate against Donald Trump, but they were able to make people believe that he was with the help of the tech, the media, and just all of these other elements. So the first thing that I noticed was they crashed Trump's economy. So we saw that immediately. Going in to 2020, Trump was unbeatable. The economy was unbelievably strong. America was back as he had promised. There used to be that expression, it's the economy, which basically meant, okay, if this person has a strong economy, they are definitely going to be guaranteed a second term. And we just felt the red wave coming. And all of a sudden, a pandemic hits, right? The pandemic hits, and now we have to do something we have never done in the history of the United States during a pandemic. Let's not forget, the Revolutionary War was fought during a pandemic, the smallpox pandemic, and we've never seen our country shut down because of a flu, because of a swine flu. It's just never happened before, and yet they were insisting on going through these extraordinary means and creating this illusion of fear. They needed Americans to be fearful because Americans were not fearful going into 2020. Jobs were roaring back, our economy was back, things were booming. So what better way to make people fearful than to first and foremost tell them to eliminate their social circles, right? Telling Americans, okay, everybody go home now and rely on your screens to tell you what's going on in the world. That gives the media full control and full power. They're saying you can't see your family members, you can't see your friends, you can't gather. They needed to create this unbelievable sense of fear, an environment of fear, so that they could control the narrative. Now everyone has to listen to what the mainstream media tells them is going on outside, because you're not allowed to go outside. You're not allowed to go to church. Your children aren't allowed to go to school. Parents are terrified. They're saying all these things. You had people that were lying about babies dying. I mean, they terrified and traumatized America. And for the first time ever, we saw a death ticker. I mean, just think about the psychology behind that. Seeing a death ticker every single day telling you how many Americans are allegedly dying, censoring people that are coming out and saying, my dad died of cancer. I don't know why on his death certificate they wrote COVID-19. Anybody who wrote that and told the truth was immediately censored. They were saying that sharing this information was dangerous, and we all just needed to rely on the CDC. and WHO to tell us exactly, the World Health Organization to tell us exactly what was going on. Doctors, never talk about a communist country. Doctors were being censored. Doctors that were saying, hey, I have a different perspective about this COVID-19 stuff. Yes, it's real, but a little bit of vitamin C, hydroxychloroquine, censored, gone, demonized, taken off of platforms, taken off of YouTube, taken off of Facebook. Again, stuff that we just have never seen in America. And just to go back to that death ticker, imagine, take anything else, take car accidents. Imagine if every single day on the media they showed you a death ticker of how many people were getting into car accidents. You would probably never get in your car. It was intentional. It was to traumatize and scare Americans and to give the media the power to report whatever they said to be a fundamental truth, and we were not allowed to challenge it. So that was the easiest way for them to first and foremost get Americans scared. The second element was, of course, the pandemic brought them an amazing opportunity to hide their candidate. Never before has there been a presidential election where you've never seen the presidential candidate. We didn't start seeing Joe until about September, when I think he emerged from his basement to do an interview with Cardi B, one of the great thinkers and intellectuals of our time. He was hiding, and they were saying, oh, it's because of the pandemic, it's because of safety. The operative word in this exercise was safety. For our safety, we had to stay home. For our safety, our churches had to be shut down. For our safety, they had to remove differing doctor opinions from Facebook. And now for our safety, Joe Biden was being responsible by hiding. Don't you guys understand? What a brilliant exercise of that idea. So Machiavellian, because people were noticing this guy seems like he's mentally deteriorating, seems to be having some issues gathering his words, said he was running for Senate at one point, was saying really absurd things, and yet they kept running him as a candidate. So that was another phase of that. And it also gave them the ability, of course, if you're going to use your senses to determine who's going to win an election, no matter what the media tells you, you will believe your own eyes. So they needed to make sure that they controlled you seeing your own eyes. And what I mean by that is that they told Trump it was irresponsible for him to have his rallies. They were dubbed super spreader events, all these terms, super spreader to have it. And Joe Biden, who could not even sell out a cafeteria, a high school cafeteria, was just being responsible. It wasn't because nobody was backing him. It was because he was just being responsible. So we had no way to measure the crowd size of seeing Joe Biden versus Trump until the very end, where Trump just sort of said, forget it. And then we saw these mass audiences, at the MAGA rallies versus what looked to me like drive-in movie theater events that Joe Biden was hosting with maybe 10 of his closest friends. Even in those things, though, try to look up Joe Biden's events, these drive-in events he was doing. The media refused to show the crowd, right? So when you see a Trump rally, you see the whole crowd, you see aerial shots. The media was intentionally panning in on Joe Biden's face. You guys recall that? And he's like shouting, and it sounds like he's getting no feedback, a couple of honks. I don't know if a honk means a boo or a yay, who knows? He would be, oh, and we need to do this, and Trump's this, and Trump's that. Literally, the idea that the media would not show anything beyond just a facial shot of Joe Biden was a part of this system of rigging. They wanted no assessment because anybody would say, this is absurd. He obviously has no audience, nobody following him. And obviously Trump's going to win, but they needed to erase that. Another element, financial rigging, right? So where was the left going to get the money when they did this rigging? That's one way to measure who's winning, right? Trump came in with so much money in 2020, was outraising all the Democrat candidates month after month after month. Where was Joe Biden going to get this money? He clearly did not have the support of a lot of people in America. Well, I mean, I've been asking, it was really interesting to see that even though we weren't allowed to go to schools or churches, that suddenly they were condoning protests and Black Lives Matter, which I have said, in my opinion, Google, in my opinion, and you can't fact check this because you guys refuse to tell the truth, where does all of the billions of dollars go when Black Lives Matter raises billions of dollars off the faces of dead Black people? So Black Lives Matter, in a span of like 48 hours, had raised something crazy like $30 million in the first 48 hours following George Floyd's death. Black Lives Matter is a $1 billion organization Where's the money going? Shouldn't there be black schools, black black schools that have been built? I don't know, maybe some black businesses that have been funded and can say I received $100,000 from Black Lives Matter organization. They seem to come around every election cycle and suddenly raise a ton of money, and nobody has asked the question of where all the money goes. It is not going to Black lives. We then found out that they were using the payment processor, blanking on the name, not looking at my husband right now. WinRed is for Republicans. Act Blue, that's correct. Act Blue, weird. Why would a organization that has nothing to do with politics, allegedly, be using Act Blue as their payment processor? We find out that they're not a 501c3, which you would not be able to claim 501c3 if you are going to be used for politics, and that they've decided to use Act Blue, which their stated purpose is to help Democrats get elected. So to me, this was the mechanism that was behind Joe Biden's campaign. In my opinion, it has not been disproven. I have been saying this since March, April, on the record, that Black Lives Matter is a quiet DNC funding mechanism that was put into place in 2015. It's been tremendously effective. It's why Black Lives Matter goes away until it's the next election cycle and nobody cares about Black lives or who's dying and things of that nature, because it's great for fundraising, because white guilt is extremely profitable. Show an image of a Black person, say, oh, this person, was killed unjustly by a police officer, and suddenly white people and their guilt, and they're posting Black squares, and oh my God, I got to get into the business of white guilt. Maybe that's my plan for 2021. I got to figure out how I can just extract dollars from these guilty white people. So that was another way that they were, I feel like that was the financial backbone behind this great rigging. And then, of course, censorship, which we saw in a way that we've never seen. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but just the mainstream media, the tech overlord, suddenly, censorship in a way we've never seen. The president of the United States is being censored right now. Every single tweet saying this information is disputed. It is not up to tech to tell us that information is disputed. In a free country where I truly have the right to free speech, I should be able to just say 1 + 1 = 3. Why would Facebook pull that information and fact check it? I mean, it's not up to Facebook to tell you that information is false. It's up to your brain and critical thinking to tell you that information is false. But as we move towards this totalitarian society, they actually don't want people to think critically. That's the whole point. They want to give them information, tell them it's true, and tell them what's false. I mean, right now, you have Americans that are walking around who genuinely believe that Joe Biden is the president-elect because the news told them it was. That is like, there is just no critical thinking. They do not understand how elections work. They do not understand that that President Trump is their current president, and they do not understand that former Vice President Joe Biden is not the president-elect. Because they are so caught in the media simulation. They believe everything the media tells them. It's scary. It's like mass brainwashing. And then they attack us, and they actually believe that 71 million Americans that cast their ballot for President Donald Trump are white supremacists and racists, including the Black ones like me. Now they're starting to call the 18% of Black men that voted for Trump chauvinists, and that's why they're voting for Trump. I mean, they've got so many names for these groups. It never occurs to them to just stop and go, maybe there's something else going on, because they're no longer being challenged to think critically. Which is an entire epidemic that we're facing in this country, is that people are literally like computers. Their brains work like computers, and the Democrats have just been downloading information into their brain, and they have no idea what's going on. Case in point, example of that today, there's some feminist, I don't know her name. She's very well known, but Breitbart ran the piece today that she had an epiphany, and she was shocked to discover, she said she wished she could take her vote back from Joe Biden because she's shocked to discover that he wants to put in place lockdowns. Like, she has had no idea that Joe Biden was a supporter of lockdowns. And I'm like, where has she been that she did not know that Joe Biden is a supporter of lockdown? It seems a little crazy. Okay, now here is my opinion from a foreign policy perspective on what's going on in this country. Again, opinion, Google, so you can't censor an opinion. I was trying to kind of put the pieces together. Obviously, we understand that China is a big mechanism, a big driving force behind everything that's happening in this country. Barack Obama virtually sold our country to China. All the jobs are going overseas. And in my opinion, this is why they wanted Hillary Clinton to follow him, because it was a manner of China to complete the transaction. Whatever has gone on behind the scenes that has guaranteed China to become, they want to be the leaders of the world. This has been their 100-year plan, to take over the world. And they have been extremely effective at doing that. So I think Obama said, here, China, take it. And then suddenly, oh my goodness, 2016 comes around and Donald J. Trump, who owes nothing to China, gets into office, and the Democrats hit the freak out button because they all stood to benefit from this transaction of selling our nation as well as other Western nations to China. Right. And China is just, everything about China right now is shady. You're telling me a nation of 1.3 billion people were able to knock out the coronavirus in 2 weeks. What was it, 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And they're back to business. They're good. They're open for business, guys. They're good. They got this under control. If you look at the numbers of infection rates, they're like 10 people were infected this week. 3 people were infected this week. If anybody watching this has been to China, it's just an impossibility. Meanwhile, we're being told you can't breathe. If you touch something, it remains on the surface. Oh, the infection rates are just getting higher and higher and higher. We're all going to die. But China was able to figure this out in 5 seconds, guys. So they took the blame and then just sort of moved on, and their economy is back up and everything's good. In fact, the person who got the wealthiest during this spell, if you're looking at people that increased their net worth, actually wasn't Jeff Bezos, it was Jack Ma. Is that his correct name? Jack Ma in China. Look up how much money he's made. It is incredible how much money he has made off of the coronavirus, and he is incredibly wealthy, and he's a Chinese businessman. So that was interesting. So I was trying to put the pieces together here, and I actually had a thought. And think about Russian collusion. That was like a very aggressive lie that the left told, right? So why Russia? Why did the left, the second that Donald Trump won, go after this theory of Russian collusion, which was completely made up out of thin air, but it took 2 years to determine that it was made up out of thin air, right? The media went with the Russian collusion. In my opinion, the reason that was done was to make sure that Donald Trump did not link arms with Vladimir Putin. And what I mean by that is that if Donald Trump had extended arms at that moment with Vladimir Putin and did any type of business with Vladimir Putin, it would have completely exploded China. The biggest what's the word I'm looking for? The only country that can stand to stop China from taking over the world, the country that is the best positioned to do that is Russia. They are their neighbor, and they are a nuclear power, right? So imagine if the West, if Donald Trump started negotiating and doing deals with Russia, which he should do. I'm personally, if I was the president of the United States, that would be a perfect way to address the fact that China is basically taking over the world right now. I would be like, all right, Vladimir Putin, come to the table. Let's see what we can get done. That would be the art of the deal for me if I was president of the United States, quite frankly. All of the spooking about Russia was to make sure, it was an insurance policy to make sure that Donald Trump could not have any effective conversation, communication, or do anything with Russia. I think China hit that button behind closed doors and said, make sure that America and Russia stays fractured by pretending that Russia meddled in our elections. They did not. I actually think China meddled in our elections, and they meddled in foreign policy by ensuring that Donald Trump would stay away from Vladimir Putin and not do, just have any sort of a relationship with him. Again, my opinion, but that would just sort of make perfect sense, because why Russia got thrown in, it was crazy. Russian collusion was a complete and utter delusion, but the Democrats were effective at separating Trump and Vladimir Putin when we should have they are the best guard against China taking over the world is Russia. Just from a geographical standpoint, they are a nuclear power, and that is something that Trump should have done, but he couldn't because Russian collusion. So, now we have Biden, who is not the president-elect, who is going to secure the deal. They slapped Vladimir Putin, and now China can say, okay, this is the country that we want, America. This is going to be this big takeover. which seems pretty obvious to me. Obviously, that's why I call him Beijing Biden. And that's why people are calling him Beijing Biden, because he is going to complete the deal that Obama started when he was in office, and that this is problematic to all Americans. Some signs that China is in control and pulling the strings, that there has been a sleeping dragon. Years ago, China implemented a social credit score and we laughed. I remember last year this was hitting the news rounds about how China was going to begin tracking and tracing every single one of its citizens via their smartphones, figuring out who they were hanging out with, where they were, a complete totalitarian mechanism. It's so crazy and implausible. When we were reading these articles last year, we were going, this is nuts. This could never, ever happen in America. They started implementing it, I believe, in 2013, and then just sort of speed tracked it. So they know, literally, if you're with somebody in China, if you're two Chinese citizens, and you're with somebody who has a lower social credit score, it can dock your credit score. It gives the government complete and utter control. To me, sounded like an episode of Black Mirror. Like that show, makes you think about how crazy tech can get. And we in the West said it could never happen in a free society. And then, wow, we implemented it really quickly because of COVID-19. Now, when you go to a restaurant, they task you to scan in. I was in London a few weeks ago, and to get on the Wi-Fi at a cafe, it wanted me to agree that to a track and trace measure, to say that in order to use our free Wi-Fi, you have to accept that your phone will be traced for, I think it said 10 days before it would expire, and release the information so that they knew that I was in that restaurant at that moment and who I was with, which seemed crazy. Every restaurant you go into in London at the moment, you have to scan your phone so they know where you are. And you're seeing this in America now. They're asking you to scan QR codes at restaurants. By the way, very quick hack, very important that everybody does it. Just say you don't have a smartphone and ask for a hard menu. You are not required by law to have a smartphone. Just say, I don't have a smartphone. Can I have a menu? They cannot deny you service for not having a smartphone. That would be extremely elitist to assume that we could all afford smartphones. So I, always give a fake number when I'm at a restaurant and they ask me to give one. And I, B, do not ever scan my phone with the QR code. These are small measures that we can take to, fight against this totalitarian state that is being implemented in America. And, what we're really seeing is just stuff that you just could never imagine. I mean, try to take yourself back to 2 years ago. Imagine if I said to you, America is going to become a country where they track and trace where you are, where they tell you when you can open your businesses. You would be wondering if I was talking about where the media is calling elections and censoring information that goes against their narrative. I mean, Neil Cavuto, what he did the other night when Kayleigh McEnany gave a very solid press conference that was laden with great information, talking about all of the irregularities, voting irregularities, he cut away from it. That's just state media. That is exactly what goes on in China, where they control everything its citizens sees, except in China, the Chinese people know, don't believe anything you see on the news. In America, now I think we do have a lot of people who understand that. And I think this power, I'm optimistic about the future, because 71 million Americans casting their ballots for Trump doubling his support amongst Black women, Trump getting 18% of Black men to vote for him this election. And those aren't even final numbers. That will go up in the end once we get these last states to report. And 34% of the Hispanic vote, despite being called a racist, a white supremacist at every corner from the media. It actually is something that we should all feel optimistic about, because it means that Americans are awake. Americans are waking up. There actually is a mass awakening taking place in America. When you look at his numbers relative in 2016, the media has been relentless in attacking this man, and his numbers are up significantly across every category in 2020. So that's something to make everybody feel optimistic. Where I think we're headed from here in terms of the election, before I get to some of your questions, I do want to say this. I've called it right so far this entire year. I was talking about the mail-in ballot scam. I was talking about this stuff, as I said, in February and March. And here's what I think is happening. Because we do have millions of Americans who just do not understand this. They are asleep, and it's sad, because they are living in the matrix. I mean, they are refusing the red pill. They believe every single sentence the media tells them. There is not a single second where they go, maybe that's not true. If the media tells them that men can be women and women can be men, they believe it. They're walking around right now going, yes, that's of course men can be women and women can be men. Of course, little children can pick their gender. I mean, this stuff that we're talking about that the left believes, it's so crazy and out there that I genuinely believe that if the media came to them and said pigs can fly, they'd say, okay, of course pigs can fly, or human beings can fly. All you have to do is really want to. They'd be outside jumping out of their windows trying to fly. These people are completely and utterly brainwashed, and it's saddening and it's frustrating, but we have to just keep reporting the truth, keep telling the truth, and realize, give them time to wake up in the same way that we woke up, because I know half of us were asleep a couple of years ago. I mean, think about this. Me, 5 years ago, I was a liberal. So that should tell you that the power of getting out information, more and more people are waking up and it's spreading. So they are, spreading the coronavirus lies and the myths, but we are spreading the truth. And I feel confident in that. But where I see this going, which is dangerous, because they actually, right now, they were celebrating in the streets because they actually thought that the media had the power to call this election. Right now, if you look across the New York Times, which is a main source of propaganda, CNN, MSNBC, they're all calling already President-elect. They're talking about the dogs. This is the dog that will live in the White House when Joe Biden moves in. This election isn't over, right? It's not over. There's just no way any person can soundly say this election is over, especially with all the pieces of litigation going on, the fact that the states themselves have not called it. So what's going to happen if the states do call it and it's for Trump? That's the question to ask ourselves right now. What's going to happen if the states call it and it's for Trump, which I still believe in my heart is going to happen? This is the way that they are going to start a civil war, because the amount of emotion and happiness that they feel and that glee is going to turn into rage and anger. We already know all year they have been coaching these little socialists and Marxists that anger, looting, rioting, all of it is okay. It's a toddler-esque response, to not getting what you want. If you don't get what you want and you're a toddler, you scream on the floor, you throw a temper tantrum. Well, they have just condoned they spent the whole year condoning temper tantrums as an emotional response. Oh, upset about, George Floyd dying, go loot, rob, do what you need to do because you didn't get what you wanted. So what they are doing now is they are prepping the stage for them to riot and loot in a way that has never been done before. My fear, and I hope I'm wrong here, is that if this election goes to Trump, they're gonna stop at nothing to burn down America, literally. I mean, I'm talking, they will be going into the suburbs, which they've threatened to do multiple times, and because they're going to paint it as if Trump stole the election, not that Trump legitimately won it and that the media called it wrong. Because remember, the state media cannot be wrong. They want them to believe that they are omniscient, omnipotent. The state media cannot be wrong. So when they suddenly say Trump won Pennsylvania, or Trump suddenly they're docking points away from Biden. The left does not understand that those points are not being docked away from Joe Biden. They don't understand that he never actually had those electoral votes. So they are going to react with confusion and rage, and they're going to try to burn down this country. So that is the final Democrat card here. If you don't give us what we want, we're going to pretend Kamala Harris and Joe Biden won. And if you don't just make that happen, which would have been Trump conceding, of course, would have made that a viability, we are going to burn down America, which is the ultimate socialist hand, raising a war against the proletariat and the perceived elite, which is just people that completely understand what's going on in this country. So those are my thoughts on the election. And I will now turn to try to follow this question thing. Okay, so let's see. I can see, maybe I click this. Oh, yes, I'm figuring this out. I just figured out live chat. I'm very excited about this. If Trump is called as president, the riots really will look like peaceful protests. I totally agree with you. It is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen, which is insane. I'm reading your super chats, guys. Thank you. A cheater is never a winner. If you can't handle Candace because you can't handle the truth, I agree. I say people love me and hate me for the same reason. It's because I tell the truth. And thank you guys for just saying thank you. If you ever come and speak in Illinois, I was just in Illinois last month. Yes, for the Freedom Fest. I speak in every state, everywhere. I think you guys are just thanking me and saying, stop the steal. This. And my husband's trying to help me figure this out because I'm really bad at tech. But I've deleted all my socials and no longer use Google after this election. It's so scary what's happening, and even more terrifying that people don't see what's happening or what's coming. God bless us all. Yes, Nicole, I agree. It's a very scary time, but I hope me talking about this, that people just be informed, but also be optimistic. I'm always optimistic and hopeful. I have been shocked by the people that have messaged me. I mean, there are a lot of people waking up, including people in LA, including celebrities, to everything that I just talked about. And it's scary. But other countries are paying attention to this too, because they see America as a last beacon of liberty. So I always just encourage every single person to be hopeful and don't give in negativity. I really do believe that God picked Donald Trump for this moment because he saw this happening and knew that it would only be Trump that would say, I'm not going to concede, I'm going to fight. I mean, imagine if it was any other Republican. They would have just completely conceded and said, oh, well, the media's up against me. Trump has been fighting the media day in and day out since he stepped in the White House, and he's going to keep fighting the media. So it's normal for him. This is a normal state for Trump. It's okay. No worries. All right. Well, I think. Oh, you guys are very sweet. Thank you guys for the super chats. I really am going to try to do this. What is today, by the way? You think Trump will unleash the military on places like Portland when he wins? Yes, I actually want to answer this as a final question. A second-term Trump is going to save America. The gloves will be completely off. He will unleash the military. He will restore law and order. And I believe, as I spoke about earlier, I think he will reach across to Vladimir Putin and kind of give us a stand against China and everything that they have done. Right now, China is trying to turn on, what's that foreign policy? I'm blanking on the term of it, of like, no, I know realpolitik, but like when they trying to turn Europe to the east. What was China's plan called?
One Belt, One Road. One Belt, One Road. One Belt, One Road.
Oh yeah, One Belt, One Road. That's exactly right. Which has been in China's plan for a very long time. The One Belt, One Road initiative of trying to turn all of the West to the East instead of looking to America as a hope. They want people to look to China as a hope. And you should look up the One Belt, One Road initiative because it's happening right now. Do you feel like Fox has turned on conservatives? I know that a lot of, obviously, there are people at Fox that have completely turned on conservatives, Chris Wallace being one of them. There's an anti-Trump movement, and I'd be curious to see who's funding these people behind closed doors. But then there are people there that are great, so you can't just take every person at that network and say, you've all turned on America. Laura Ingraham has been strong. Tucker Carlson has been amazing. So I am loath to kind of just castigate every single person at Fox News. But I think obviously we all know that the Murdoch brothers are extremely left-leaning and that we are seeing the influences of that now. And they're working with Paul Ryan, and he's another establishment person who might as well be a Democrat, and all of those types, the McCains, these are just horrible human beings, Republican in name only, and I'm happy to speak out against them anytime. All right, guys, I think that is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this live session. Next time, I will make sure to put a little translucent powder on my face so I look a little greasy. I look greasy? Maybe just lighting suit clothes. Is that light or grease? Looks like I'm sweating. Anyways, guys, I'm too pregnant for this. Guys. I'm just too pregnant to have to do this all the time. I love you guys so much. Oh, lastly, obviously, factcheckzuck.com. Make sure you go if you have not given to that lawsuit against the fact checkers. I will tell you this, guys. Remarkably, I have not been fact checked since I've launched this lawsuit. So I am going to deliver a big win there. For those of you that have been asking, why don't we turn it into a class action lawsuit? It's a discussion that we're having. It may be me winning this lawsuit, and then those same lawyers are going to start a class action lawsuit for everybody that has been censored. So this is all about paving the path first, pioneering that path to make it okay to sue fact checkers and to make fact checkers scared to do Mark Zuckerberg's dirty little bidding. I appreciate your work in Switzerland. Thank you guys so much. I will always fight, for the American people and tell the truth. I will never be an establishment Republican. I consider myself to be a free thinker always. And there's not a single person that could get me to bite my tongue. So there's that. All right, guys. Love you. Be safe. Have a good night.
Thank you for watching my content. I really appreciate your coming back for more. If you would please subscribe, and click that notification bell. You'll definitely be able to see the upcoming videos, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Thank you.